I think we should just be friends. My ex needs me more. My girlfriend calmly broke up with me. What I did next ended up destroying her new relationship. The words came out of her mouth with a calculated coldness as we sat in the cafe where we'd had our first date 2 years ago. Camila didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Her eyes shone with that mix of arrogance and contempt that only someone who feels completely sure of herself can show. Around us, conversations continued normally, oblivious to the moment my world came to a halt. I took a sip of my now cold coffee, looked her directly in the eye, and simply nodded. She was expecting tears, perhaps pleading or shouting. Instead, what she saw was a calm smile that clearly disconcerted her. At that moment, Camila had no idea that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I'm Sebastian, I'm 32 years old, and I work as a civil engineer at a construction firm. For 2 years, I believe Camila was the love of my life. We met at an art exhibition where she worked as a curator. I was captivated by her passion for art, her contagious laugh, and the way she made everything seem like an adventure. The first few months were perfect. Romantic dinners, weekend trips, plans for the future. We talked about getting married, having children, building a life together. I was completely in love and thought she felt the same. What I didn't know then was that Camila had never truly gotten over her previous relationship. Rodrigo, her ex-boyfriend, had been a part of her life for 5 years before she and I met. According to what she told me at the beginning of our relationship, he had left her for another woman, breaking her heart. Camila assured me that that chapter was closed, that I was her present and her future. Naive me, I believed every word. I never suspected that during that whole time, she had maintained constant contact with Rodrigo, who had apparently realized his mistake and wanted to get back with her. The betrayal didn't come all at once. It was a gradual process that I should have noticed earlier. It began about 4 months ago, when Camila started showing less interest in our plans. The romantic dinners we used to enjoy became tedious obligations for her. She canceled commitments at the last minute, always with excuses that sounded reasonable at the time, but now, in retrospect, were obviously lies. Her phone, which she used to leave carelessly on the table, suddenly became something she guarded jealously. The calls she used to answer in front of me now required her to go to another room. 3 months ago, during a family dinner at my parents' house, I noticed that Camila spent most of the night glued to her phone. My mother, always perceptive, gave me a worried look that I decided to ignore at the time. I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure boyfriend. I trusted Camila, or at least that's what I told myself. That night, when I asked her what had her so distracted, she responded with irritation that it was a work problem, that her boss was being impossible with an important project. I believed her because I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was too painful to consider. The signs continued to pile up. Camila started comparing everything I did with vague memories of her past, seemingly innocent comments about how her ex did things a certain way, how he understood her love for art in a way I supposedly couldn't. At first, I tried to be understanding. I even tried harder, trying to show her I could be what she needed. I spent hours in museums and galleries learning about artists I'd never known before. All to connect with her on that level that seemed so important, but nothing I did was ever enough. 2 months ago, Camila started coming home late on Friday nights. Her explanation was always the same: work meetings that ran late, dinners with colleagues to discuss projects. I worked late on weekdays, so weekends were our time together, or at least they used to be. Now she preferred to spend those hours out doing things that supposedly couldn't include me. When I expressed that I would like to spend more time together, she accused me of being controlling, of not understanding the demands of her career. She made me feel guilty for having basic emotional needs in our relationship. The truth finally came to light exactly 2 weeks ago. It was a Friday night, and Camila had supposedly gone out with her work friends. I had stayed home finishing some blueprints I needed to deliver on Monday. Around 11 p.m., I received a message from Lucia, a mutual friend who also worked at the same museum as Camila. The message simply said, "Sebastian, I think there's something you should know. Can you call me?" My heart raced. Lucia and I weren't particularly close, so the fact that she was contacting me at that hour meant something serious was going on. I called her immediately. Lucia sounded uncomfortable, as if every word was a tremendous effort. She explained that that night, she had gone to a restaurant downtown with her husband to celebrate their anniversary. There, At a table in the back, she had seen Camila. She wasn't with her work friends, as she had told me. She was with a man Lucia recognized from the photos Camila had in her old apartment before she moved in with me. Rodrigo, her ex-boyfriend. They weren't just having dinner as friends. According to Lucia, they were holding hands, looking at each other in that unmistakable way that only couples have. When Camila saw Lucia, her face turned pale, but she didn't approach or try to explain anything. That night, I waited up for Camila to come back. She arrived after midnight, humming a song, acting as if everything was normal. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and started telling me about the supposed outing with her friends, adding elaborate details about conversations that never happened. I let her talk, observing every gesture, every expression. Finally, when she finished her fictional account, I asked her directly, "Where were you really tonight?" Her face changed instantly. The mask of innocence fell, replaced by a mixture of surprise and annoyance. She tried to maintain the lie, but when I mentioned that Lucia had seen her with Rodrigo, she broke down. What followed was one of the most painful conversations of my life. Camila admitted that she had been seeing Rodrigo for the past 3 months. At first, according to her, they were just casual meetings for coffee and to catch up. But soon those meetings became more frequent and more intimate. Rodrigo had confessed to her that leaving her had been the biggest mistake of his life, that he had never stopped loving her, that the woman he had cheated on her with meant nothing compared to what they had had. Camila, caught between her history with him and her relationship with me, had decided to explore if those old feelings were still alive. The answer, apparently, was yes. I asked her if she had ever loved me, or if I had simply been a convenient distraction while she got over her breakup with Rodrigo. Camila had the audacity to tell me that she had loved me, that our 2 years together had been real for her, but that what she felt for Rodrigo was different, deeper, something that came from many years of shared history. She explained to me that Rodrigo understood her in ways I never could, that they shared things we simply didn't have. She spoke as if that were a valid justification for betrayal, as if having a history with someone gave you permission to destroy another person. That night, I slept on the sofa in our apartment, the apartment I had bought before I met her and that she had moved into a year ago. I couldn't be in the same room with her. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, pain, anger, humiliation, but underneath it all, something else was taking shape. A cold clarity was beginning to set in. Camila had made her choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. During the following week, Camila tried to maintain a semblance of normality while clearly torn between her two options. I, for my part, maintained a calm that even surprised me. There were no dramatic fights or pleas. I simply observed, waited, and thought. Camila interpreted my tranquility as indifference or perhaps as a sign that I would accept whatever she decided. She couldn't have been more wrong. Yesterday, exactly 1 week after I confronted her, Camila asked me to meet her at that cafe. I knew what was coming. Throughout the week, I had seen how she spent more and more time on her phone, how her smile grew wider when she received certain messages, how she discreetly began to pack some of her things. Rodrigo had won her back, and she had decided that her history with him was worth more than our 2 years together. I had mentally prepared myself for that moment, but nothing could have prepared me for the coldness with which she did it. When she uttered those words about being just friends and her ex needing her more, something definitively broke inside me. It wasn't my heart, that was already in pieces. It was the last vestige of consideration I had for her. Camila expected drama. She expected me to beg, to promise to change, to fight for our relationship. Instead, I took another sip of my coffee, looked at her directly, and said, "I understand. If that's what you want, I respect your decision." I saw the confusion in her eyes, the frustration of not getting the reaction she expected, but what Camila didn't know, what she couldn't know at that moment, was that I had already set in motion a plan that would teach her exactly how much she had lost by choosing her ex over me. The conversation at the cafe lasted barely 20 more minutes. Camila seemed restless, as if my calmness disturbed her more than any emotional outburst. She explained to me that Rodrigo had changed, that he had matured, that he was now ready for the commitment he had previously denied her. She spoke with that enthusiasm I recognized from our first months together, except now that sparkle in her eyes was for another man. She told me she hoped we could remain friends, that she greatly valued what we had shared. I listened in silence. nodding occasionally until she finally got up from the table. Before leaving, she took my hand and said, "You're a good man, Sebastian. You'll find someone who loves you as you deserve." The irony of those words coming from the woman who had just destroyed me was not lost on me. When I returned to our apartment that afternoon, Camila was already packing her things. She had called Rodrigo from the cafe, I later found out, and he had come immediately with his truck to help her move out. Seeing that man in my home, touching the things I had bought, smiling with that winner's arrogance, required every ounce of self-control I possessed. Rodrigo was exactly as I had imagined him, tall, handsome in that rehearsed way that comes from spending too many hours at the gym, with a smug smile that screamed superiority. He extended his hand to me, as if we were old friends meeting under normal circumstances. "No hard feelings, brother," he said with a familiarity that made me clench my teeth. I shook his hand briefly, feeling his fingers deliberately squeezing mine harder than necessary. Another pathetic gesture of male dominance. Camila mostly packed clothes and personal items that afternoon. She told me she would be back during the week to get the furniture and decorations she had brought when she moved in with me. I told her there was no problem. She could come whenever she wanted. She seemed relieved by my cooperation. As they loaded the last boxes into Rodrigo's truck, Camila came over to give me a farewell hug. I reciprocated mechanically, feeling the betrayal of her closeness. "Thanks for making it so easy," she whispered in my ear. "I always knew you were different from other men." They left together, their laughter floating down the hallway as the elevator door closed, leaving me alone in an apartment that suddenly felt empty and strange. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with a whiskey I didn't touch, looking at the marks on the wall where Camila's paintings had been, the empty spaces on the shelves where her art books had been. But I wasn't lamenting, I was planning. During the previous week, since Lucia had alerted me to Camila's cheating, I had been gathering information, not in an obsessive or illegal way, just paying attention to things I had previously overlooked. And what I had discovered had given me exactly what I needed to make sure Camila understood the consequences of her decisions. First, there was the apartment. As I mentioned, I had bought it before I met Camila. It was completely in my name, paid in full thanks to an inheritance I received from my grandfather. When Camila moved in, we never discussed legal terms because I was in love and trusted her. I simply gave her a copy of the keys and told her it was her home too. She naturally assumed she had some kind of right to the property. After a year of living together, I had overheard her phone conversations with friends where she mentioned our apartment and our joint investment. The reality was very different. She had no legal right to the property and would soon find out. Second, there were the shared finances. 6 months ago, Camila had lost her job at the museum due to budget cuts. She found a job at a smaller gallery, but with a significantly lower salary. During those months, I had covered most of our expenses, food, outings, vacations. Camila contributed what she could, but it was a fraction of what I put in. She had assumed that when she got back with Rodrigo, she could simply continue the lifestyle she had become accustomed to with me. She was in for a very rude awakening. Third, and this was the most satisfying, was Rodrigo's job. During our conversations, Camila had casually mentioned that Rodrigo worked at his father's construction company, a family business that had been in operation for 3 generations. What Camila didn't know was that the firm where I worked, Mendoza Construction, had just won a huge contract with the city government to renovate the historic downtown district. It was the biggest project in our company's history. And guess what other firm had been competing for that same contract? Herrera Constructions, Rodrigo's father's company. My boss, Engineer Mendoza, was a man of principles, but also of business. When I met with him 2 days after Camila left me, I explained my personal situation. I told him about Camila and Rodrigo, about how they had humiliated me. Mendoza listened to me with that contemplative silence that characterized him. Then he told me something I'll never forget. "Sebastian, you've been with this company for 5 years. You're one of my brightest and most reliable engineers. I've seen how you've dedicated yourself to every project as if it were your own. What that woman did to you was unforgivable. And the Herreras, let me tell you, they're not trustworthy people. I've had my own problems with them in the past." What followed was a conversation that would change everything. Mendoza revealed to me that during the bidding for the historic district project, There were rumors that Herrera Constructions had tried to bribe one of the municipal inspectors to obtain privileged information. Nothing could be proven, but it left a bad taste in the mouths of government officials. Our firm won the contract not only because of our superior technical proposal, but also because we had an impeccable reputation. Mendoza then made me an offer. He would appoint me as project manager for the historic district development, a significant promotion that included a substantial salary increase. But there was more. The nature of the project required coordination with several other smaller construction firms that would act as subcontractors. Herrera Constructions had expressed interest in being one of those subcontractors. As project manager, Mendoza explained, you will have final authority over which companies we select as subcontractors. Of course, all decisions must be justified by technical and professional criteria. But if you were to find legitimate reasons why Herrera Constructions does not qualify for the job, no one would question your judgment. He looked me directly in the eye. I'm not asking you to do anything unethical, Sebastian. I'm telling you to evaluate each candidate rigorously. If the Herreras don't meet our standards, and I suspect they won't given their questionable history, then they have no place in this project. Do you understand? I understood perfectly. I accepted the promotion that same afternoon. I spent the next few days meticulously reviewing every aspect of Herrera Construction's history. I didn't have to fabricate anything. The problems were there. You just had to look for them. Projects finished late, customer complaints, 2 lawsuits for defective work that had been settled out of court with confidentiality agreements. I documented everything with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. When I presented my report to Mendoza, recommending that Herrera Constructions be disqualified from the list of potential subcontractors, he reviewed it carefully and then signed his approval. Excellent work, Sebastian. This is exactly the kind of diligence we need on this project. While this was happening on the professional front, I also took care of other details. I contacted my lawyer, Mr. Vargas, a meticulous man who had handled the purchase of my apartment years ago. I explained the situation with Camila and asked for his advice on how to protect my interests. Vargas was direct. Since the apartment is completely in your name and she never contributed to the down payment or the mortgage payments that you've already paid off, she has no property rights. However, if you have shared possessions or if she left valuable items on the property, we need to handle that correctly to avoid future problems. I gave him a complete list of everything Camila had left in the apartment, including the furniture she was supposedly coming back for. Vargas drafted an official document that basically stated that Camila had 30 days to remove her belongings from the apartment, after which I would have the legal right to dispose of them as I saw fit. The document also included a detailed inventory of each item with photographs and estimated values. I asked Vargas to send it by certified mail to Camila's address, which was now Rodrigo's apartment. I want to be clear that I'm being completely transparent and legal in all of this, I explained. Vargas smiled slightly. I understand perfectly. Documentation is protection. You're doing the right thing. Exactly 1 week after Camila moved in with Rodrigo, I received a text message from her. It was a Saturday afternoon and the message said, "Hi, Sebastian. I know things ended badly between us, but I hope we can keep things civil. Rodrigo and I are having a small get-together at his apartment next Friday to officially announce that we're together. It would be great if you could come. I know it sounds weird, but I really value your friendship and I'd like you to get to know Rodrigo properly. No pressure if you don't want to go." I read the message 3 times, each reading increasing my disbelief at her audacity. She was inviting me to a party to celebrate her relationship with the man she had left me for, and she expected me to show up with a smile on my face. My first instinct was to ignore the message completely, but then I thought better of it. This could be a perfect opportunity to see exactly how things were between Camila and Rodrigo, to observe their dynamic, to better understand the situation she had gotten herself into. It would also be interesting to see if Rodrigo had really changed as Camila claimed, or if he was still the same arrogant man who had shown up at my apartment. After considering it for an hour, I replied, "Thanks for the invitation, Camila. I'll see if I can make it." "What time?" Her reply was immediate. "Great. At 8. The address is 2500 Reforma Avenue, apartment 603. I'll send you the location." I really appreciate you being so mature about this. On the Thursday before the party, I received a call from my younger sister, Anna. She had been very close to Camila during our relationship, considering her almost like a sister-in-law. When Camila left me, Anna felt personally betrayed. "Is it true you're going to that stupid party?" she asked without preamble. "How did you know about that?" Camila posted about it on Instagram. She's bragging about her new life and mentioned that even her friend Sebastian was coming to celebrate with them. "People are commenting on how mature you are. It makes me want to vomit." I sighed. Of course Camila had made it public. It was all part of her need for constant validation. "I have my reasons for going, Anna. Trust me." There was a pause. "Okay, I trust you, but if you need moral support, I can be outside in my car ready to get you out of there if things get weird." I smiled at her loyalty. "Thanks, sis, but I'll be fine." Friday arrived faster than expected. I dressed carefully, choosing casual but presentable clothes. I wanted to project confidence and stability, not the look of a broken man. I bought an expensive bottle of wine as a host gift, the kind of detail I always made at social gatherings. I arrived at Rodrigo's building exactly at 8:10, late enough not to seem eager, but not so late as to be rude. The building was modern and expensive, in one of the most exclusive areas of the city. The doorman directed me to the elevator, and soon I was knocking on the door of apartment 603. Rodrigo opened the door with a beer in his hand, and that same smug smile I remembered. "Sebastian, man, glad you could make it. Come in, come in." He clapped me on the back, a little too hard to be friendly, and led me inside. The apartment was spacious and luxuriously decorated, clearly the home of someone with money. There were about 15 people scattered around the living room and balcony, all with drinks in hand, chatting animatedly. Camila was in the center of a group near the window, laughing at something someone had said. When she saw me, her face lit up and she quickly approached. "Sebastian, you came. I'm so glad." She gave me a kiss on the cheek as if we were old friends with no complicated history. The whole situation felt surreal, like being in an absurd play where everyone knew their lines except me. Camila introduced me to several people that night, all friends of Rodrigo or acquaintances from his social circle. No one seemed to know exactly who I was or what my relationship was to the hosts. Camila simply introduced me as my friend Sebastian, conveniently omitting that we had been a couple until 2 weeks ago. Rodrigo, for his part, acted as the perfect host, making sure everyone had drinks and food, telling jokes and anecdotes that kept people entertained. I watched him interact with Camila, noticing the small gestures of possession, his hand on the small of her back, how he would interrupt her when she spoke to add his own comments, how he checked his phone constantly, even while talking to guests. Around 9:30, Rodrigo asked for everyone's attention by tapping his beer bottle with a spoon. "Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight. As you know, Camila and I have a history. We were together for 5 years before I made the biggest mistake of my life by letting her go." He paused dramatically as people murmured their approval. But sometimes fate gives you a second chance, and when it does, you have to be man enough to take it. "Camila, my love, getting back with you has been the best thing that's happened to me, and I want everyone to know that this time it's forever." He raised his beer, and people applauded. Camila blushed and kissed him while the guests cheered. I kept my expression neutral, clapping politely like everyone else. After the toast, I retreated to the balcony for some fresh air. The apartment was on the 18th floor, and the view of the city was breathtaking. I was alone, enjoying the silence, when I heard voices coming from inside, specifically from the kitchen, which was partially visible from where I was standing. It was Rodrigo talking to another man I had identified as his best friend. "Carlos, I'm telling you, man, Camila is amazing, and the best part is she's so easy to handle. Not like other women who are always demanding things." Carlos laughed. "Have you told her about the job thing yet?" "Are you crazy?" "Not yet. First, I need her to feel secure here, to break all ties with the other guy. Then I'll tell her she might have to cut back on expenses for a while, but by then she'll be so hooked she won't care." I stood frozen, processing what I had just heard. Rodrigo was clearly hiding something from Camila about his work situation, and his reference to handling her and waiting for her to break all ties before revealing financial problems painted a very different picture from the reformed man Camila had described to me. I discreetly took out my phone and activated the voice recorder, hoping to capture more of their conversation. I didn't have to wait long. Carlos asked, "And what if she finds out about the lost contract? Your old man is furious. Everyone at the company knows." Rodrigo snorted. She's not going to find out. Besides, even if she does, where is she going to go? She's already burned her bridges with that idiot ex of hers. She practically begged me to take her back. Women like her need to feel wanted. I give her that attention, and she gives me what I need. It's a fair transaction. The rage I felt at that moment was almost overwhelming. This man had destroyed my relationship. He had manipulated Camila into coming back to him, and now he was talking about her as if she were a property he had acquired. But beyond my personal anger, there was something else in that conversation that intrigued me. The mention of a lost contract and Rodrigo's furious father. Could it be that they already knew about their disqualification as subcontractors for the Historic District project? The official announcement wasn't supposed to be made until next week, but maybe they had received some preliminary notification. I put my phone away with the recording secure and went back inside the apartment. Camila found me near the snack table, filling a plate I had no real intention of eating. Hey, thanks for coming tonight. I know it must be weird for you. I shrugged. It's not that weird. It's been a while. Are you really okay? She asked, touching my arm with a familiarity that would have once melted me. You look different. I don't know, calmer or something. I'm fine, Camila. In fact, better than fine. I got promoted at work this week, project manager for the Historic District Development. Her eyes widened. Seriously, Sebastian, that's incredible. I always knew you would go far. There was genuine joy in her voice, but also something else. Regret, doubt. It was hard to tell. And what about you? I asked. Everything okay with the job at the gallery? Her expression clouded slightly. Oh, well, I actually quit a few days ago. Rodrigo says I don't need to work if I don't want to, that he can support both of us while I focus on my art. It's going to be like before, when we were together the first time and I could dedicate myself to painting without worries. Something in the way she said this sounded rehearsed, as if she were repeating the justification to herself. And you're sure about that? I know how much you valued your financial independence. Things are different now. Rodrigo matured. He's not the same man who left me. He's committed, stable. His family has money. It's not like we have to worry. I nodded slowly. Sure, makes sense. The conversation was interrupted by Rodrigo, who appeared with 2 beers in hand. Sebastian, come on. There's someone I want you to meet. He led me towards an older man who was standing on the balcony, smoking a cigar despite the no-smoking signs. Sebastian, this is my father, Don Alberto Herrera. Dad, this is Sebastian Torres, the civil engineer I told you about. Don Alberto shook my hand with a firm grip that lasted a second longer than comfortable. He was a man in his 60s with completely gray hair and a military posture. So you're the famous ex of Camila. My son told me about you. His tone was impossible to decipher. Something between mockery and evaluation. You work in construction, right? Yes, sir, civil engineer at Mendoza Construction. The reaction was immediate. Don Alberto practically spit out his drink, and Rodrigo turned pale. Mendoza, the father repeated. You work for Armando Mendoza? That's right. In fact, I was just promoted to project manager for the Historic District Development. The silence that followed was tense. Don Alberto exchanged a look with Rodrigo that needed no translation. I now understood completely what I had heard in the kitchen. They already knew about their disqualification from the project, and now they knew that I was part of that decision. The expression on Don Alberto's face went from surprise to something much darker. Interesting. Very interesting. Rodrigo, can we talk for a moment in private? Without saying more, the father dragged his son into a room, closing the door behind them. The next few minutes were extremely awkward. Camila noticed that something had happened, but she didn't understand what. What was that about? She asked, looking at the closed door. Rodrigo looked upset. I have no idea. Maybe it's a business thing. She frowned, but didn't press further. Other guests began to leave, thanking them for the hospitality and promising to see them soon. I took advantage of the wave of goodbyes to make my own exit. Camila, it was an interesting evening. Thanks for inviting me. Wait, you're leaving already? But it's only 11. I have to work tomorrow. The new position comes with a lot of responsibility. I gave her a cordial hug and headed for the door. Just as I was leaving, the door to the room opened and Rodrigo came out. His face was red, and he had clearly been arguing with his father. Torres, wait. His voice had an edge that hadn't been there before. I turned around. Yes. We need to talk in private. He looked meaningfully at Camila, who seemed confused. Honey, can you give the last guests their goodbyes? Sebastian and I need to discuss something quickly. Camila hesitated, clearly sensing the tension, but finally nodded and went to the kitchen. Rodrigo led me to the balcony and closed the sliding door behind us. I know what you did, he said without preamble, with the Historic District project. My father just told me they received a notification that we don't qualify as subcontractors. And lo and behold, you are now the project manager who made that decision. I kept my expression neutral. I did my job, Rodrigo. I evaluated all candidates based on objective criteria. Your company simply didn't meet the necessary standards. Bullshit. This is personal. You're angry because I took your girlfriend, and now you're trying to ruin my career. His voice was rising. First of all, you didn't take anything from me. Camila made a choice. Second, my professional decision has nothing to do with my personal life. If you want to question my evaluation, you're welcome to request a formal review. All my findings are documented and available for audit. Rodrigo took a step towards me, invading my personal space. Listen to me carefully. I don't know what game you're playing, but it's not going to work. My family has connections. We're going to appeal this decision, and we're going to make sure you lose your job in the process. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The threat was so empty, so desperate. Go ahead, Rodrigo. Do what you have to do. But I'll tell you something. I don't mix my personal life with my professional life. Every decision I made regarding your company is justified and backed by solid documentation. There's no favoritism, no personal vendetta, just facts. If you can't accept that, the problem isn't me. I turned to leave, but Rodrigo grabbed my arm. We're not done talking. I looked him directly in the eye, my voice lowering to a calm but firm tone. Let go of me now. Something in my expression must have warned him that it wasn't a good idea to push further because he let go. This isn't over, he muttered as I opened the sliding door and went back inside the apartment. Camila was in the living room, now practically empty except for her and a couple of straggling guests. Everything okay? She asked, looking between Rodrigo and me. Everything's perfect, I replied with a smile. Just a small business disagreement, nothing important. Rodrigo came in behind me, clearly trying to control his temper in front of Camila. Yeah, nothing important, just a misunderstanding. But his eyes were shooting daggers at me. I said goodbye again, and this time managed to leave without further interruptions. In the elevator, I checked my phone and saw several messages from Anna asking how everything was going. I replied that everything was fine and that I would tell her the details later. But as I went down to the lobby, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had set something in motion that was going to escalate quickly. The next few days were a mix of intense work and anticipation. At the office, I immersed myself in preparations for the official start of the Historic District project. There were meetings with architects, structural engineers, urban planners, and representatives from the city government. Mendoza formally introduced me as the project manager in a meeting with all the important stakeholders, and the recognition I received was gratifying. This was the kind of project that could define a career, and I was determined to do it perfectly. Meanwhile, I continued to document everything meticulously, especially any communication related to the selection of subcontractors, knowing that the Herreras appeal would eventually come. On Wednesday of the following week, I received a call from Camila. Her voice sounded tense. Sebastian, can we talk? Do you have time for a coffee? There was something in her tone that made me accept immediately. We agreed to meet at a neutral cafe, different from the one we had frequented when we were together. When I arrived, Camila was already there, sitting at a table in the corner, her hands wrapped around a cup that was clearly already cold. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes that her makeup couldn't completely hide. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down. I needed to talk to someone, and you're the only person I feel can understand. I ordered a coffee and waited for her to continue. Things with Rodrigo are weird. Since your visit on Friday, he's been acting different, distant, irritable. Yesterday, we had a terrible argument. I took a sip of my coffee, keeping my expression carefully neutral. About what? About money, work, the future, things I thought we had already resolved. Sebastian, Rodrigo told me to quit my job because he could support us. But now he's talking about how we need to be more careful with expenses, that his company is going through a difficult time. When I asked him what had changed in a week, he got angry and accused me of not trusting him. She sighed heavily. And then there's what his father said last night at dinner. Don Alberto told me that your company had disqualified them from an important project. He said it was your direct fault, that you had done it for revenge because Rodrigo and I were together. Is that true? This was the moment I had been waiting for, the opportunity to plant the first seeds of doubt. Camila, I'm going to be completely honest with you because I think you deserve the truth. My company won a contract to develop the historic district. It's a huge project, probably the biggest in Mendoza Construction's history. As part of that project, we needed to select subcontractors. Herrera Constructions applied to be considered. I paused, making sure she was looking at me directly. I didn't make that decision alone. It was part of a rigorous evaluation process where we reviewed the history of each candidate company. Herrera Constructions was disqualified because they didn't meet our standards of quality and reliability. There's complete documentation that supports that decision. But that doesn't answer my question, Camila insisted. Did you do it for revenge? No. I did it because it's my job to make sure that only the best companies work on our projects. If Rodrigo's family thinks they can use connections or pressure to get contracts they don't deserve, that's their problem, not mine. Camila was silent for a moment, processing. Don Alberto was so sure it was personal. He said you were jealous of Rodrigo, that you couldn't accept that I had chosen a better man. The words hurt more than I expected, but I maintained my composure. Camila, you made your choice, and I respected it. Yes, it hurt me. Yes, it still hurts. But I'm not the kind of person who mixes my personal feelings with my professional life. If you can't believe me, that's fine, but don't accuse me of something I didn't do. Camila looked at me for a long moment, her eyes searching for any sign of deception in my face. Finally, she sighed and said, I believe you. You were always honest with me, even when the truth was uncomfortable. It's just that everything is happening so fast and so differently than I expected. She nervously played with her empty cup. When Rodrigo told me to get back with him, he promised me so many things: stability, commitment, a future together. But now I realize that I really didn't know what I was getting into. I left my job because he insisted, and now I feel vulnerable, dependent on him in a way I don't like. And the worst part is, I see signs that I ignored the first time we were together. What kind of signs? I asked, though I had a good idea based on what I had heard in his kitchen. His temper, mainly. Rodrigo was always a bit explosive, but I attributed it to his passion for things. Now I realize it was a lack of control, and the way he talks about women when he thinks I'm not listening. 2 nights ago, he was on the phone with Carlos and I heard how he described his partner's wife. It was so dismissive, so cruel. When I asked him about it later, he said he was just joking. That's how men talk among themselves. But it didn't sound like a joke, Sebastian. It sounded like his real opinion. She wiped away a tear that had begun to form. I made a terrible mistake by leaving you for him. This was the question I had been waiting for, but not in the way I imagined. In my revenge fantasies, Camila came crawling back, begging for forgiveness, and I had the power to coldly reject her. But seeing her there, vulnerable and scared, realizing she had traded something good for something potentially dangerous, I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. Instead, I felt a mix of validation and sadness. Camila, I can't answer that for you. What I can say is that when we were together, I treated you with respect. I never made you feel less. I never tried to control your life or your decisions. If Rodrigo is doing those things, then yes, it's a problem, but you can't compare your relationship with me to your relationship with him. They're 2 completely different things. I know, she admitted. And I'm not saying I want to get back with you. I know I ruined that beyond repair. I just needed to talk to someone who knows both of you and can be objective. We finished our coffee with lighter conversation, carefully avoiding the deeper topics. When we parted, Camila gave me a hug that lasted a second longer than necessary. Thanks for listening to me. And I'm sorry for everything. I nodded, but didn't say anything else. As I watched her walk away to her car, I took out my phone and wrote a quick message to my sister Anna. Things are unfolding exactly as I expected. Rodrigo's house of cards is starting to crumble. Her reply was immediate. Do you need me to do anything? Not yet, but be ready. The following days brought more revelations. Don Alberto Herrera, as Rodrigo had threatened, formally filed an appeal against our decision to disqualify his company. The appeal alleged favoritism, arbitrary decisions, and a conflict of interest on my part due to my personal relationship with Rodrigo. Mendoza called me into his office the following Monday to discuss the matter. Read this, he said, handing me a 15-page document detailing all of the Herreras accusations. It was breathtaking in its audacity, accusing me of practically fabricating evidence to justify my decision. How worried should I be? I asked after I finished reading. Mendoza leaned back in his chair and smiled. Not at all. I personally reviewed all your documentation before approving your recommendation. It's rock solid. More than that, I've hired an external auditing firm to review the case independently. An external audit? Isn't that expensive? Very expensive, but it's also a worthwhile investment. Look, the Herreras have some influence in this city. Don Alberto knows a lot of government officials. He's made donations to political campaigns. If we let this become a he said she said game, it could get messy. But if we have an independent audit that confirms your evaluation was completely justified, then they don't have a leg to stand on. The firm I hired is Rivera and Associates. They're the best in the city, completely impartial. The results will be ready in 2 weeks. I felt enormously relieved. Thanks for backing me up on this, engineer. I always back my people when they're right, and you're definitely right here. That night, I received another message from Camila, but this one was very different from the vulnerable tone of our conversation at the cafe. Sebastian, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Did you know Herrera Constructions was going to be disqualified when you came to our party? Was that why you came? To rub it in Rodrigo's face. The accusation took me by surprise. Rodrigo had clearly been working on her, poisoning her against me. I replied carefully. When I accepted your invitation, I didn't know Rodrigo's father would be there. And no, I didn't go to rub anything in anyone's face. I went because you invited me, and I thought we could maintain a cordial relationship despite what happened. If Rodrigo has a problem with the consequences of his family's business practices, that has nothing to do with me. Her reply took several minutes to arrive. Rodrigo says you ruined his family's reputation intentionally, that you called other potential clients and told them not to work with Herrera Constructions. Is that true? Now I knew this was completely fabricated. Camila, that's absolutely false, and Rodrigo knows it. I don't have the time or reason to do something like that. If his company is losing clients, maybe they should consider that their work speaks for itself, and it's not saying very good things. There was a long pause before her next message. He's very angry, Sebastian. I've never seen him like this. Last night, he broke a plate against the wall during an argument about this. It scares me a little. Those words froze me. Camila, if you feel unsafe, you should leave there. You can stay with your sister or with friends. You don't have to tolerate violence. It wasn't violence, he was just frustrated. I'm probably exaggerating. But I knew she wasn't exaggerating. I had seen enough similar situations, heard enough stories from friends and acquaintances to recognize the warning signs of a relationship that was becoming abusive. The isolation from her job, the financial dependence, the emotional control, the outbursts of anger, it was all there. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave him, to come get her things from my apartment and start over. But another part knew that she had to come to that conclusion on her own. Anything I said would just be interpreted as manipulation or revenge. Take care, Camila, and if you ever need help, call me. She didn't reply after that. On Thursday of that week, I received an unexpected call from Lucia, the friend who had alerted me to Camila's cheating. Sebastian, I know you probably don't want to hear about Camila, but I thought you should know something. I saw her at the museum yesterday. She came to talk to the director about getting her old job back. She was crying in his office. I could hear parts of the conversation from the hallway. Apparently, she needs money urgently, but Rodrigo doesn't want her to work. She told the director she made a mistake by quitting and begged for another chance. I processed this information carefully. And what did the director tell her? That there were no positions available at the moment, but he would keep her in mind if something opened up. Basically a polite way of saying no. Thanks for telling me, Lucia. There's more. After she left the director's office, she found me in the cafeteria. She needed to talk to someone, and I was the only familiar face around. She told me she's trying to get her life back in control, but Rodrigo is resisting anything that means independence for her. He says if she really loved him, she would trust him to provide, that her need to work suggests she doesn't think he can take care of her properly. It's classic manipulation, Sebastian, and the worst part is, she's buying it. I felt that familiar mix of anger and helplessness. Did she tell you anything else? She mentioned they're having financial problems. Apparently, Don Alberto cut off Rodrigo's access to the company's accounts after losing that contract with you. Rodrigo has to live on his base salary, which apparently isn't as much as he made Camila believe. The luxurious apartment where he lives is owned by the family, not him personally. This was better than I had expected. Does Camila know all this? She's finding out gradually, and she's not happy, but she's also trapped. She quit her job, she left your apartment, she doesn't have many options right now. After hanging up with Lucia, I sat down to think about my next move. Things were progressing naturally without me having to do much. Rodrigo was self-destructing, his true nature emerging under financial pressure. Camila was beginning to see what she had traded, but I wanted to make sure the lesson was complete, that she understood not only that Rodrigo was a bad choice, but that I had been a good choice that she had wasted. On Friday afternoon, 2 weeks after the party at Rodrigo's apartment, I received the results of the independent audit from Rivera and Associates. The 30-page report confirmed every one of my findings regarding Herrera Constructions. More than that, the audit had uncovered additional problems that I hadn't found, including 2 unreported fines from the Construction Licensing Board for safety violations on previous projects. The report concluded that not only had it been appropriate to disqualify the company, but that doing so was the only responsible decision given the circumstances. Mendoza organized an emergency meeting with representatives from the city government to present the findings. I was there along with our legal team. We also invited Don Alberto and Rodrigo to attend, giving them the opportunity to respond to the audit's conclusions. The meeting was tense from the start. Don Alberto arrived with his own lawyer, an older man in an expensive suit who immediately began to question the impartiality of the audit. My client believes that this so-called independent investigation was actually an exercise designed to justify a decision that had already been made for personal reasons, he declared pompously. The representative from Rivera and Associates, a woman named Patricia Morales, was unfazed. Sir, our firm has an impeccable reputation built over 30 years. We do not participate in justification exercises. We reviewed the evidence objectively, and our conclusions are backed by verifiable documentation. If you wish to challenge any specific finding, I am more than willing to discuss it point by point. What followed was a methodical dissection of each of the problems we had identified with Herrera Constructions. Every time Don Alberto's lawyer tried to refute a point, Patricia presented additional evidence that supported it. Delayed projects with documentation of customer complaints, defective work with photos of the problems, safety fines with copies of the official citations. By the end of the presentation, even the Herrera's lawyer seemed demoralized. Don Alberto was red with anger, but surprisingly silent. Rodrigo hadn't said a single word throughout the entire meeting, his face a mask of contained humiliation. The government representative, a man named Mr. Ramirez, finally spoke. Mr. Herrera, based on this evidence, I see no basis for your appeal. Mendoza Construction's decision was not only justified but necessary. Your appeal is officially denied. After the meeting, as I was packing my things, Rodrigo approached me. His face was pale and his hands were trembling slightly. I hope you're happy, he said in a low voice so no one else could hear. You just ruined my family's business. My father is going to have to lay people off because of this. People with families who depend on those jobs. I looked at him directly. Rodrigo, I didn't ruin anything. Your family ruined their own reputation with years of mediocre work and questionable practices. I just did my job making sure they didn't bring those problems to my project. If you want to blame someone, look in the mirror. This has nothing to do with the job, and you know it. This is because I took Camila from you. I laughed humorlessly. You know what's sad, Rodrigo? That you don't even realize you didn't take anything from me. Camila made a choice. A bad choice, as she's discovering, but a choice nonetheless. And yes, it hurt me, but I got over the pain by focusing on my career, on being good at what I do. Meanwhile, you focused on showing off your victory, and it turned out you had nothing real to offer beyond empty promises. Rodrigo took a threatening step towards me, but stopped when he noticed that Mr. Ramirez was still in the room observing. You're going to regret this, Torres. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Go ahead, but make sure you also tell them how you lost a multi-million-dollar contract because your company couldn't meet basic quality standards. That should do wonders for your reputation. I walked out of the conference room feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The public confrontation, the official validation of my decision. It had all gone better than I could have planned. But the real satisfaction would come soon, when Camila finally saw completely who the man she had chosen over me was. That same night, as I was in my apartment reviewing some project documents, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, thinking it might be Rodrigo or his father calling for more threats, but something made me respond. It was Camila, but her voice sounded different, broken and scared. Sebastian, I'm sorry to call you so late. I know I have no right after everything, but I don't know who else to turn to. She was crying, her breath catching between sobs. What happened, Camila? Rodrigo and I had a terrible fight. The worst yet. He came home furious after some work meeting. He wouldn't tell me what happened. He just started yelling at me about how everything was my fault, that if I hadn't invited you to that stupid party, none of this would have happened. When I asked him what he was talking about, he pushed me against the wall. My blood ran cold. Did he hurt you? Not physically, not much. He just left a bruise on my arm where he grabbed me. But Sebastian, the way he looked at me, there was so much hatred in his eyes. He wasn't the same person I got back with. Or maybe he was, and I just didn't want to see it before. She took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I left the apartment. I'm in the parking lot of a mall nearby. I don't know what to do. I don't have my own money. My family lives in another city, and most of my friends are busy or I don't want to involve them in this. There was a pause. I know I have no right to ask you this, but can I stay at your apartment tonight? Just for tonight. I promise. I'll find something more permanent tomorrow. Every instinct in my body told me this was a bad idea. Letting her back into my space, helping her after how she had treated me. It all seemed like a recipe for emotional disaster. But I also knew that if something happened to her, and I had had the chance to help but refused, I would never forgive myself. Where are you exactly? I'm coming to get you. The relief in her voice was palpable. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you. I'm at the Las Americas Mall, in the North Side parking lot. I told her I would be there in 20 minutes and hung up. As I drove there, I called my sister Anna and explained the situation. Are you sure about this? She asked, clearly worried. I don't want to see you get hurt again. She's not staying long. Just until she finds something else. I can't leave her on the street, Anna. Okay, but keep your boundaries and call me if you need anything. I found Camila sitting in her car in a dark corner of the parking lot. When I tapped on her window, she jumped, startled, before recognizing me. She got out of the car with a small suitcase that she had obviously packed in a hurry. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes red and swollen. When the parking lot light hit her arm, I could see the dark purple bruise darkening on her skin. God, Camila. I whispered, feeling the anger rise in my chest. You should go to the police. This is assault. I don't want to make this bigger than it already is. I just need a safe place for tonight, and then I can think clearly. I led her to my car and drove back to my apartment in silence. She looked out the window, lost in her thoughts. When we arrived at the apartment, Camila paused at the door, looking at the space she had once shared with me. It looks different, she commented softly. You moved the furniture. I needed to make some changes after you left. Make it feel like my space again. She nodded, understanding. You can stay in the guest room. The sheets are clean. Thank you, Sebastian. I can't tell you how much this means. That night, Camila showered and changed into comfortable clothes. When she came out of the bathroom, she looked a little more like herself, though her eyes still reflected the trauma of the night. We sat in the living room with hot tea, the silence between us awkward. Finally, she spoke. I guess you were right about everything. Rodrigo didn't change. I just wanted to believe he had because the alternative was admitting I had made a terrible mistake by leaving you. You don't need to apologize to me now, Camila. You just need to be safe and think about what to do next. But I do need to apologize. I treated you horribly. I left you in the cruelest way possible, and then I had the audacity to invite you to celebrate my new relationship. What kind of person does that? She wiped away fresh tears that had started to fall. I was so caught up in the fantasy of getting back with my first love that I didn't see what I had right in front of me. You respected me. You supported me. You loved me unconditionally, and I threw it all away for a man who basically sees me as a possession. Her phone started to ring. It was Rodrigo. She rejected the call, but it immediately started buzzing with text messages. I read them over her shoulder before she could lock the screen. Where are you? Come home now. You're overreacting. If you're with that asshole ex of yours, you're going to regret it. You need to block his number, I said firmly. And tomorrow we're going to the police to file a report. That bruise needs to be documented. I can't do that. His family has influence. They'll make my life impossible. Camila, they're already making your life impossible. How much worse can it get? She didn't answer, but I saw the consideration in her eyes. That night, I slept restlessly, aware of her presence in the room next door, wondering if I had done the right thing by bringing her here. The next morning, I woke up to find Camila already up, making coffee in my kitchen with a familiarity that made my heart ache. "Good morning," she said softly. "I hope you don't mind me using your kitchen." "Not at all. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in weeks, honestly." We had breakfast together in uncomfortable silence. Afterwards, Camila finally spoke about her plans. "I called my sister this morning. She lives in Monterey. She says I can stay with her while I find a job there. It's a fresh start." I felt a mix of relief and something else I didn't want to examine too closely. "That sounds like a good plan. When are you leaving?" "My sister is buying me a bus ticket for tomorrow. If I can stay one more night here, I would be extremely grateful. If not, I completely understand. You can stay, no problem." The rest of the day was spent in mundane activities. Camila made some calls, organizing her move to Monterey. I worked from home, reviewing blueprints and answering emails. It was strangely domestic, a shadow of what could have been if things had been different. That afternoon, while Camila was in the shower, her phone started ringing on the living room table. It was Rodrigo again. This time he left a voicemail. I shouldn't have listened to it. It was an invasion of privacy, but something compelled me to. Rodrigo's voice sounded different, less aggressive and more desperate. "Camila, please, pick up. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I acted like an idiot last night. The stress from work, everything that's going on with my family, it just got to me. But that's no excuse for how I treated you. Come home, and we'll fix it. I love you, baby. I can't lose you twice, please." It was classic manipulation, violence followed by apologies, promises of change. The cycle that traps so many people in abusive relationships. When Camila got out of the shower, I told her about the message. "Don't listen to it," I warned her. "It's manipulation. That's what they do. They hurt you and then convince you they'll change." "I know," she said wearily. "I've heard enough similar messages in the past few days. But this time is different, Sebastian. This time I'm really leaving. I'm not going back to him." That night we ordered takeout and watched a movie, trying to keep things normal, but we were both aware of the underlying tension of unspoken things floating between us. When the movie ended, Camila turned to me. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. If I hadn't left you, if I had chosen to stay with you, do you think we would have been happy?" It was an impossible question to answer honestly. "I don't know, Camila. Maybe. But there's no point in thinking about that now. You're right. It's just that sitting here with you, feeling safe for the first time in weeks, makes me realize what I lost." She moved slightly closer. "Sebastian, I know I have no right to ask this, and you can say no without a problem, but is there any chance we could try again? Thank you for everything, Sebastian. For being a better person than I deserved, for helping me when you didn't have to. I hope you find someone who values you the way you should be valued. Take care, Camila, and good luck in Monterey." I watched her board the bus and find her seat by the window. She waved one last time before the bus pulled away. As I watched it drive off, I felt a strange sense of closure. It wasn't the dramatic revenge I had imagined, but it was something better. It was peace. A week later, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Sebastian, it's Rodrigo. I know you're probably the last person who wants to hear from me, but I need to know if you've seen Camila. She left a week ago and hasn't answered my calls. Her sister hung up on me when I tried to contact her. If you know where she is, please tell me. I'm worried." I didn't reply. I owed Rodrigo nothing, and I definitely wasn't going to betray Camila's trust by revealing her location. I blocked him and went on with my day. 2 days later, Rodrigo showed up at my office. The receptionist called me, clearly uncomfortable. "Mr. Torres, there's a man here who says he needs to speak with you urgently. Rodrigo Herrera." I sighed. "Tell him I have nothing to talk to him about." But Rodrigo didn't leave. Instead, he started causing a scene in the lobby, his voice rising as he demanded to see me. I finally went down to confront him, not wanting him to disrupt my colleague's work. "Rodrigo, you need to leave now. Not until you tell me where Camila is. I know you're hiding her from me." His appearance was a mess. He clearly hadn't shaved in days. His clothes were wrinkled. I don't know where Camila is. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Now leave before I call security. This is your fault, he shouted, drawing stares from everyone in the lobby. You put ideas in her head. You told her to leave me. Everything was fine until you showed up in our lives again. Rodrigo, the only person responsible for Camila leaving you is you. Your temper, your manipulation, your violence. That's what drove her away. I feel like myself again for the first time in months. I was genuinely happy for her. I'm glad to hear that. You deserve to be happy, Camila. You too, Sebastian. You really do. The following months brought significant changes for everyone involved in this story. The historic district project moved forward without a hitch, becoming the success Mendoza had predicted. My work was recognized not only within the company, but also by city government officials. I received offers from other firms, but decided to stay where I was valued and respected. Engineer Mendoza entrusted me with increasingly important projects, and my career flourished in ways I had never imagined possible during those dark days after Camila left me. As for Herrera Constructions, the consequences of losing the historic district contract turned out to be more devastating than even I had anticipated. Without that project as an anchor, other clients began to question the company's reliability. The problems the audit had revealed became public knowledge in the industry, and the Herrera family's reputation took a hit from which it would take years to recover. Don Alberto had to downsize his workforce by 40%, laying off loyal employees who had been with the company for decades. The irony of Rodrigo blaming me for this, when it was his own family's shoddy work that caused their downfall, was not lost on me. Rodrigo specifically went through a remarkable downward spiral. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that his father had removed him from any position of responsibility in the company, blaming him for the loss of the contract due to his relationship with Camila and his subsequent confrontation with me. Without his family's financial backing and without Camila to impress, Rodrigo's facade completely crumbled. The luxurious apartment where he had lived turned out to be company property, and Don Alberto forced him to move into a much more modest place as part of the austerity measures. The man who had bragged about his ability to support Camila without her having to work was now struggling to support himself. About 4 months after Camila moved to Monterrey, I received an unexpected message from her. She had attached a photo of an art exhibition at a small but elegant gallery. "Look at this," the message said. "My first solo exhibition. Nothing big, just 10 paintings, but it's something." The photo showed Camila standing next to one of her paintings, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. It was a genuine smile, not forced or performative. She looked thin but healthy. Her hair was shorter in a style that suited her. I replied with sincere congratulations. Over the following months, we maintained sporadic but friendly contact. She would tell me about her progress in Monterrey, how she was rebuilding her art career, how therapy was helping her process both the relationship with Rodrigo and the decisions that led her there. One day, about 6 months after her departure, Camila called me with news. "Sebastian, I need to tell you something, and I want you to hear it from me directly." Her voice sounded serious, but not worried. "What's up?" Rodrigo tried to contact me again. He created a fake social media profile and sent me messages pretending to be an art collector interested in my work. When I realized it was him, I blocked him immediately, but before that, he told me things about his current situation that you need to know. She paused. "Apparently, he's blaming you for everything that's happened to him. He's told anyone who will listen that you deliberately ruined his life, that you used your position to destroy his family for revenge. He even mentioned something about trying to take legal action against you. This information didn't particularly surprise me. Let him try. I didn't do anything illegal or unethical. Every decision I made is documented and justified." "I know," Camila replied, "but I thought you should be warned. Rodrigo, when he feels cornered, can be unpredictable. Just be careful, okay?" I thanked her for the warning and assured her I would be vigilant. True to form, my lawyer, Mr. Vargas, received a letter 2 weeks later from a lawyer representing Rodrigo Herrera. The letter alleged defamation, emotional distress, and malicious interference in business relations. They were asking for a compensation of 5 million pesos. Vargas read the letter, laughed, and filed it under frivolous lawsuits. "This isn't going anywhere," he assured me. "They don't have a case. They might not even file the formal lawsuit." It's probably just an intimidation attempt. He was right. The lawsuit never materialized. Rodrigo had been making empty noise, one last tantrum from a man who couldn't accept the consequences of his own actions. Meanwhile, my life continued to improve in unexpected ways. I met someone new, an architect named Elena who worked at a firm associated with ours. We met during a project meeting and connected immediately. Elena was everything Camila hadn't been: direct, independent, self-assured in a way that didn't require constant validation from others. She had no interest in emotional games or comparing herself to ex-partners. It was refreshing and exciting in ways I hadn't experienced even in the best moments with Camila. When I finally told Elena about my history with Camila and Rodrigo, she listened without judgment and then said something that stuck with me. "You know, I think that woman did you a favor by leaving you. Not because you were inadequate, but because you clearly weren't meant to be together. She needed to learn some hard lessons about what really matters in a relationship. And you needed someone who would value you from the start without having to learn how to do it the hard way. Sometimes the best things in life come after the worst disappointments." She was right in ways she probably didn't even fully realize. A year after Camila left me, I hosted a dinner to celebrate the completion of the first phase of the historic district project. I invited my team, some key people from the city government, and, of course, Elena, who by then was officially my girlfriend. The dinner was at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, the kind of place I had once taken Camila for special occasions. But this time it was different. I wasn't trying to impress anyone or prove my worth. I was simply celebrating genuine achievements with people who respected and valued me. During the dinner, Mr. Ramirez, the government representative, made a toast. "I want to publicly acknowledge the exceptional work of engineer Sebastián Torres. His integrity, professionalism, and dedication to this project have been exemplary. There were difficult moments, controversial decisions, but Sebastián never compromised his standards. It's that kind of leadership that makes projects like this successful." The room applauded, and I felt a wave of genuine satisfaction, not for having proven something to Camila or Rodrigo, but for having proven something to myself, that I could overcome betrayal and pain and come out the other side stronger and more successful. That same week, I received a final message from Camila. It was long and thoughtful, clearly something she had been thinking about for a long time. "Sebastián, I've been in therapy for almost a year now, working on understanding why I made the decisions I did. My therapist helped me see that when I went back to Rodrigo, I wasn't choosing true love, I was choosing familiarity, the comfort of a known story, even if that story had been painful. With you, things were too good, too stable. Part of me didn't believe I deserved it, so I sabotaged the relationship by chasing something more dramatic and less secure." The message continued. "I now understand that you represented real growth, emotional maturity, a healthy adult relationship, and I just wasn't ready for that yet. I needed someone who would make me feel like the heroine of a soap opera with dramatic ups and downs. Rodrigo gave me that, and I paid the price for confusing drama with passion. I want you to know that I don't blame you for anything that happened afterwards. I know Rodrigo insists you deliberately ruined his life, but I was there. I saw how you behaved with integrity, even when you had every reason to be vengeful. You did your job professionally, and the consequences the Herrera family faced were the result of their own actions, not yours. In fact, looking back, I think you did me a favor by not interfering in my decision to be with Rodrigo. I needed to learn those lessons for myself." The message ended. "I'm in a much better place now. I have a job I love. I'm creating art again. I have a healthy support network. I even started dating someone new, an art teacher at a local school. He's kind, patient, and treats me with respect, the things I should have valued from the beginning. I hope you found happiness too, Sebastián. You deserve it more than anyone I know." I replied briefly, thanking her for her words and confirming that I had indeed found happiness with Elena. We wished each other the best and tacitly agreed that this would probably be our last exchange. There was no need for more. We had both moved on, learned our lessons, and were building better lives. The story between us was truly closed. As for Rodrigo, I occasionally heard updates through the construction industry grapevine. Herrera Constructions eventually stabilized after taking on smaller jobs and slowly rebuilding their reputation. Don Alberto had permanently removed Rodrigo from any leadership role, instead assigning him to site supervision on minor projects. The man who had once bragged about his bright future now worked under the sun on construction sites, a descent that must have been humiliating for someone with his ego. According to reports, Rodrigo had stopped blaming me publicly, probably advised by lawyers that his accusations could result in actual countersuits. 2 years after the day Camila told me we should just be friends because her ex needed her more, I was standing on a construction site, reviewing the progress of another major project. My phone rang with an unknown number. I normally didn't answer calls from numbers I didn't recognize, but something made me respond this time. It was a female voice I didn't immediately recognize. Sebastián Torres. Yes. Who's calling? It's Patricia, Camila's sister. I don't know if you remember me. I vaguely remembered her from a family gathering years ago. Yes, of course. Is everything okay with Camila? Yes, she's fine. In fact, that's why I'm calling. Camila is getting married in 3 months to her fiancé, David. She wanted to invite you personally, but she wasn't sure if it would be appropriate after everything that happened between you. I told her I would call you to see how you felt about it. I thought about it for a moment. The truth was, I felt nothing negative towards Camila. The pain and betrayal of 2 years ago had completely faded, replaced by friendly indifference. I appreciate the invitation, but I think it would be better if I don't attend. Not out of resentment, just because that chapter of my life is closed. But please, give her my best wishes. I hope she'll be very happy. Patricia seemed to understand. I will. She was right about you, you know? She said you were a good man, that you deserved good things. I'm glad to know you found them. After hanging up, I stood there thinking about how far we had all come. Camila had apparently found what she was looking for. I had found something better than I had imagined. And Rodrigo had learned in the hardest way possible that actions have consequences and that character is eventually revealed under pressure. That night, I had dinner with Elena in our apartment, the same apartment where I had once lived with Camila, but which now felt completely different, redefined by new memories and a healthier relationship. I told her about Patricia's call. How does that make you feel? Elena asked, always perceptive about these things. Honestly, nothing. It's like hearing about the wedding of a distant acquaintance. I'm happy for her, but it doesn't affect my life in any significant way. Elena smiled. That's a sign that you've completely healed. Real forgiveness isn't about reconciliation or pretending nothing happened. It's about reaching a point where the other person no longer has emotional power over you. She was right, as always. 3 months later, on the day of Camila's wedding, I was completely absorbed in my own life. Elena and I had decided to move in together into a bigger house, something with space for a home office for her and a workshop for my own hobby projects. We spent that day looking at properties, laughing together, planning our future. I didn't think about Camila or Rodrigo even once. That part of my life was truly in the past. Looking back now, I understand that what initially seemed like the worst betrayal of my life was actually a gift in disguise. Camila, by leaving me, forced me to reevaluate who I was, what I deserved, and what kind of relationship I really wanted. She taught me that love shouldn't require you to diminish yourself, to compromise your values, or to accept less than you deserve. Rodrigo, unintentionally, showed me exactly the kind of man I never wanted to be. Insecure, manipulative, incapable of accepting responsibility for his own failings. The consequences they both faced were not the result of my revenge, but of their own choices. Camila chose drama over stability and paid the price in the form of an abusive relationship that left her traumatized. Rodrigo chose arrogance over integrity and paid the price in the form of a ruined career and a destroyed reputation. I simply continued to do my job with professionalism and integrity, and I was rewarded for it. There was no complex conspiracy or master plan of revenge. There was just a man doing the right thing consistently, even when it would have been easier to take shortcuts or compromise standards. The real satisfaction didn't come from seeing them suffer. It came from building a life so full and satisfying that their suffering became irrelevant to my happiness. It came from finding a partner who valued me from day one. It came from professional achievements earned through genuine merit. It came from looking in the mirror every day and being proud of the man I saw reflected, someone who maintained his integrity even when it would have been so easy to lose it. If I could talk to my 2 years ago self, the man sitting in that cafe listening to Camila say her ex needed her more, I would tell him this. The pain you feel now is temporary, but the lessons you learn will be permanent. The people who betray you will eventually betray themselves. You don't need to take revenge because life has a way of balancing the accounts. Your only job is to continue being the best version of yourself, to treat others with respect, and to trust that what is yours will come to you at the right time. And that's how my girlfriend got back with her ex, because he needed her more. And how I discovered that sometimes the worst betrayal can lead you to the best chapter of your life. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that in the end redirected you towards something better? Have you seen how natural consequences caught up with someone who wronged you without you having to intervene? I'd love to read your experiences in the comments. And if this story resonated with you in any way, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story.